Now, those were some hometowns. Lovely. We're down to the final four, but they weren't as exciting as I usually hope them to be. Maybe that's a good thing. Let's dive into it. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Before I get into the episode, I want to do a little bit of light housekeeping. Welcome to those people who are new subscribers here. I always love reading all your comments. I try to respond as best as I can. But I'd like to just muse a little bit at the beginning. And I want to follow up on this whole idea of guilt. Because I started this conversation last week about, I think it's kind of strange that Joan keeps talking about guilt. Part of it, I said, is that I think it has to do with her husband's legal shenanigans. But I wonder if, here's what we think of in psychology. Guilt is reserved for when you've done something wrong. And I have to ask Joan, what has she done wrong? Is it so wrong to want to move on, to find a new partner? But what we're seeing in every other episode is like this internal dialogue that Joan is having. I'm deserving of love. It's my turn. I can get there. Nope, I'm not there. And another thing I want you to think of in psychology is a little bit of projection, because I think projection is happening in particular in this episode. Joan may not feel completely ready, so she's projecting onto the men that they're not ready. And I said last week, I don't want to decide who's ready or not because that feeling can change and that person can decide for themselves. But these are just a couple of thoughts I have kind of thinking about last week's episode, about this week's episode. And I do think that it's making for a harder season in some ways because we want to root for Joan to find love, and then just as soon as she's doing it, she kind of retreats back, and so we're seeing all of this. I don't think it's the men. I think it's Joan, and I just want to put a pin in that and then move on and talk about the episode. But I feel like she's trying to talk herself into it, and I never feel like that is a good idea. She may get there. I certainly hope she does. But I feel like it's one of those seasons where we just need more time. Joan needs more time. And I feel like if we had gotten a full season, meaning like 11 episodes, because remember, these things are filmed really fast, and I just feel like it's kind of rushed. Okay, now I want to say in general, here's the other thing that bothers me a little bit about the Golden Bachelorette and the Golden Bachelor is that they give the leads such a glow up. They do this every season with the hair extensions for the women, with the men getting, makeup and hair and clothing and all of that. But I feel like that extends to the storylines too, that like they have to be perfect. And there's just such a buildup. I think people are ready for more real. I don't know. Let me know what you think of in the comments. I'm just musing at this point. But now we can get into the episode. Okay. Thank you for indulging me in my little conversation with myself. Okay. Joan is traveling from LA. She looks beautiful as usual. Now, what's interesting is usually the way that they film these is not the way that they show them to us, the viewers. Most typically, they start on the East Coast. Now, that would be like if they're traveling from Europe, they start on the East Coast and kind of move their way back west, and then they end in LA. We don't know. Did Joan go right to Lake Tahoe? I don't think so. I think she probably did go to the East Coast. She could have even met with Chalk first, then went to Chicago, then back to LA. But we meet her in LA. The first one that we see is with Guy. Joan is in a beautiful orange dress, a little bit revealing for me. I'm like, she's meeting the families, but they are out on the beach. And we're in Lake Tahoe, one of my favorite places. Now, they're on a boat, which should be perfect for Joan. She loves boating. She said from the beginning she loves anything on the water. But she's looking kind of wistfully. Is she thinking about someone else? Is she thinking about Chalk? Did she just come from those other family visits, or she's trying to contemplate what happened in her last hometown visit? But she seems pretty distant. And I have to say, Guy is really trying. He's pulling her in towards him. He's driving the boat. People say that when you make a wish, and throw it in. He says that your wish comes true. But legend has it that you shouldn't tell someone your wishes. And the fact that they tell each other their wishes doesn't mean that they jinxed it, that it's not going to come true. Anyway, here they are. It's a lovely day. What's not to love? Then you should know that Lake Tahoe is not right next to Reno. If you look on the map, it's about 30 minutes, 45 minutes away. Reno is more of a smaller town. Well, I wouldn't say smaller, it's a rural town. And we then get to meet Guy's family. They walk in, they look so happy. The family's so happy to meet them. We've got a big family here, and all the G's, Glenn and Gail, and oh, I couldn't even keep up. But what's interesting to me is now they're sitting with their family, and usually there's a story about how they met or the first impression or the dates that they've taken. And I don't hear a lot of stories from Joan talking about Guy and kind of amping him up to his family. She does want to comment, though, on Charles' story, right? The story that Charles was suffering because he didn't understand if in any way it was his fault or he could have done more for his wife. And Guy really was the medical doctor who helped Charles out. So she's wanting the family to know he's a good guy. I see your brother. I like that about him. But I also got this feeling, the family being protective, and we now know that he went through a difficult divorce. There was also this restraining order. He tried to say, well, this was a long marriage. Again, no, I'm not going to open that up again. But I feel like the family is all rooting for him. What's not to love also about Joan? In all four of these families, everyone can't say enough about Joan, how beautiful she is, how kind she is. And that's what we've seen all season, that she makes people comfortable. She makes kids comfortable. She makes sisters comfortable. She makes kids comfortable. She is a very good conversationalist. She makes everyone feel at ease. But I just picked up a little bit of this sadness, and I think all season long, we've seen that Guy is sentimental also. Because it was night one that Guy cried a little bit, and we've seen him get choked up multiple times. And every time he does, I'm always like, oh, is that Guy? Because it feels like it comes quickly, right? It feels like it just bubbles up to the top quickly. But I really think that the audience is connecting with him. And I read a lot of comments on social media. I was reading the comments about Mark and now about Guy. I'm thinking, what do you think of this? Let me know what your thoughts are. If it's not Mark to be Golden Bachelor, what about Guy if she doesn't choose him? I could kind of see that. He is, even though he has this backstory, he is eager. I don't know where he is, if he's still working, if he's retired, but he has a good family. He seems like there's a certain readiness for that. Now, it was his son that says, Dad, tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 where you are. And he says he's a 9.5. And that surprised me a little, like his affect surprises me. Like, wow, 9.5, you are really all in. And then he gets choked up again because he says, never in a million years would I be saying that I can love again. And like, this is why I love the show, for the men and their connection, but this moment of healing. Now, the other thing that we as the viewers, as I said last week, we're privy to comparison and contrasting. And if you see how Joan kisses Chalk, you can just know, and Guy doesn't know, that she's really just giving him a cheek. Like, he's trying to get in there and, telling her that he can love again, that he's falling for her. And she's just giving him a cheek. And I feel like he doesn't even know that she's really not that into him. And so I'm getting a little bit worried for Guy that if she doesn't choose him, he's really going to be crushed, right? And the kids are echoing this sentiment. Like, please choose my dad. Maybe Joan will be the one to kind of fix him. The sisters are like, wouldn't it be lovely? And I think, oh gosh, they don't know because they can't see. She's being very polite and very nice, but I just don't see the passion between these two. It just feels a little bit flat for me. Let me know what you thought of Guy's hometown. I somehow just wanted it to be more. I wanted it to be more for him. And I felt like Joan was just not all there. Okay, let's move on to Chicago, my hometown. I was born and raised there. My father still lives there. My mother lives there. I love Chicago, and it is really a picturesque city. Let's face it, there's just so many wonderful places. So now they are starting out at Pascal's salon. I looked this up. It's called Pascal Pour Elle. I'm like, whoa. It's a beautiful two-story brickstone. And he starts out right before. He's like a local at this coffee place. He gets his coffee, put it on my tab. Then he meets her. And it just feels, I don't know, it just feels fun. I like this for Joan, that Pascal takes care of her. He says, like, it's my turn. You're on my turf now. I'm going to bring you a coffee. I'm going to show you my haunts. And they are literally walking distance to the salon. But the salon itself, really impressive. I mean, how many chairs are in that salon? 2 stories. He walks in. He's like, these are my people. He gets to introduce them to Joan. I really love this for Joan. And now, as I said last week, this like all makes sense why she would want a hometown with him. But I feel like in this case, like Guy likes Joan a little bit more than she likes him. I kind of feel like maybe Joan likes Pascal a little bit more than Pascal likes her. He certainly has a big life. And that's the thing. Would Pascal ever leave Chicago? I mean, Joan's made it clear she's not leaving Maryland. I cannot see this man getting up and moving. She would have to move to him, and we know she won't do that. So it's like, well, even no matter how much she likes him, how would that work? I just don't see it. It makes for fun TV, though, right? That he then gets to give her the spa salon experience, with doing a hand massage and champagne. The only thing that was really weird was, who's this guy at the bowl? Like, he gave permission for Joan to wash his hair. I used to actually wash hair in Chicago, just for you to know. In high school, I worked at this salon in our neighborhood, and I was the shampoo girl. Now, nowadays, you can't do that. Like, you need a license to wash somebody's hair. So it felt kind of weird that Joan was washing this guy's hair. He's like, I can't believe I'm here on TV. But anyway, it made for a fun time. And I do wonder if Joan has alerted to chalk reminding her of John, her late husband. But Pascal reminds her of him a little bit too, like a big personality. He takes over, he takes charge. I mean, this is a man who's running a big business, and that has to be exciting. He has a certain kind of energy. He's certainly a people person. He loves fashion, and his Hermes belt, everybody knows, including his family, that he's going to show up wearing black. But I loved that we're finally seeing some flirting. Like, you see Joan in like a more playful way with Pascal, that I didn't see her flirting with Guy. So I really liked this hometown. I have to say, it was probably one of my favorites. I thought she looked beautiful in her dress. It seemed a little bit more appropriate. But here's where we learn a little bit more about Pascal too, that he's recently gotten his heart broken. It was his daughter that signed him up, and he said he wasn't really quite ready. Now we come to meeting his family. They all guess he's going to be wearing black, and sure enough, he is. Natalie, his daughter, she's got a really good presence. She's got a big social media presence. We've got his son, Max, really a good-looking family. Like, they take after his dad. You're like, okay, the dad was born in what year? And his son is like, okay, can we find somebody in the middle here? I really liked this family more than I thought. And now Joan is sitting down with his family, and she wants to like protect his grandson. But she says, yes, your dad is sexy. And the kids are proud of this. And the family's proud of this. Yeah, we know our dad. He's kind of like the cool mom. He's like the sexy dad. And I like that he seems close to his son Max. There's a moment there where they're both kind of tearful and talking. And it felt at first like a little bit, narcissistic, all kind of built up. But I do think it's very genuine. And Max, of course, wink, wink, I didn't have any parties at the house. But Joan asks some good questions. Has your dad had a lot of girlfriends? And Max, of course, is honest. He has to admit that his dad has, but that he's also sick of dating. And so we can appreciate that. Anybody who's out dating, I do love to see this heartfeltness with the family and the kids, and that everything Pascal does is going to be big. Okay, now we get to the big fake out. Last week, I didn't know. I thought it was Jordan's daughter, but it turns out it was Pascal's daughter, Natalie, who, they could have just clipped it or franken bit it where you change the language just a little bit. But she said, my dad wouldn't not choose you. Here's Joan, just like now we're finally seeing these insecurities. And she's mentioned it. We're going to mention this with Jordan too, but this is the second time now where my fear is that I would choose your father and he wouldn't pick me back. And that's where Natalie, that famous line, she says, no, that wouldn't be the case. Okay, let me know what you thought of Pascal's hometown. I liked it. I liked him taking charge, and he's in what kind of car is that anyway? I wasn't quite sure. I couldn't pick up what the logo was, but the fast car, he's zipping around Chicago. It was a fun hometown, but I still feel a little bit angsty, like maybe Joan likes him more. And there's this little kind of playful, it's flirtatious, this banter, but like, did you miss me? I missed you. And I thought it's kind of cute, actually. Okay, so Pascal is really growing on me. I'm not saying that I would choose him for Joan or even for myself, but I'm just saying I can see the attraction. I kind of get it why he's made it this far. That he has been the life of the house. All the other men have said those things about him, and Joan really does adore him. Let's get to Jordan. Now we're still in Chicago, but they're downtown by the water. If you ever get to downtown Chicago, that's the place to be. Take the architectural tour on the Chicago River. It is just beautiful. The architecture in Chicago is just bar none. But they're eating pizza and cake, famous things to do in Chicago. And then I'm not sure what neighborhood they go to. It looks like there's some Brickstones, which can be any place in Chicago. And Jordan's family is lovely, but we do get to find out more about Jordan, that he hasn't been in a relationship for 10 years. And what I do like is while they're talking with the family, Joan is poking fun of Jordan a little bit for like falling on the ice and the ice skating date. And they all said, well, you're from Chicago. We would think that you know how to ice skate. And that's a funny kind of laugh. And so you feel like a lightheartedness. And I can see why she chose Jordan, because he does seem like a more youthful guy. He is a little bit younger, but I can see there's a lot of positive energy. Now, Joan, though, does not let us know. She's made it known multiple times, whether this is projection or not, that the two men in Chicago are a little bit more ambivalent. And now we get to meet Jordan's daughter, Allie. I really liked Allie. She had like some of the most insightful things to say. She does say that her dad hadn't dated anybody seriously for 10 years. She wants to know. I thought this is so fascinating. What a fascinating line of questioning. She wants to know if the other guys are more emotionally open than her father. Wow. We don't hear this. I just like put a pin in this. This is unique. Usually it's tell me how much you care about my son or my daughter compared to the others. You better not break their heart kind of thing. But a comparison, where does my dad stack up in terms of emotional availability? Because she's got to have this feeling already, right? This was sparked by her real lived experience with her own father, that he's not been really emotionally vulnerable. And she wants to know where he stacks up. So Joan is telling her, yep, I fear that your father wouldn't be all in. And I'm back to what I said last week, is this is the risk that no lead is willing to take. Like, your dad might get there eventually, and if we had a full season, Jordan might get there, but this is very truncated, even faster than usual. So they part. It just feels, again, flat. I don't get the connection. It feels like two polite people really trying. But Joan herself says that she feels confused. Never a good feeling. If you are confused in dating, run. It's not going to get better. You should be so clear on how the person feels about you, and you should know how you feel about them. But it is true, Jordan is pretty guarded. And could Joan be the one to break down the walls? Well, it would be a lot of effort. And think about it. Why would I put effort into something, as I've said, that's a question mark versus going for certainty? That's how it always ends. You always end up going with the person who you feel more certainty. That's my thoughts on Jordan. Obviously, we know the ending didn't give me a great feeling. I felt like he did the minimum. His family was lovely, but just didn't hit the mark. Next, the fourth hometown with Chalk. So now they're in Kansas City, and she had to drive probably a far way to get out here. I don't know. I've never been to Kansas City, but the way that they greet each other is special. Just comparing Joan to everyone else, they whisper to each other, "Oh, I missed you. Great to see you." And that feels really softer. It feels more intimate in this connection with Chalk and Joan. Whether you like Chalk or not, it's just interesting to observe the two of them, to watch their body language. They're more in sync than any other couple. So this felt different to me. I do have to question, though, why we are at the Friends Ranch. I did a little sleuthing. Chalk Chappelle is a successful guy. His net worth is like $1.8 million. Supposedly he owns 3 other properties, 2 in Kansas City, like larger homes, and 1, I thought it was in Oklahoma. Interesting. He has 2 kids, Taylor and Tyler. That name is interchangeable. They're a little bit younger. I think it was the daughter who's also in insurance. The son, it looks like he's now relocated to Charlotte for work. The family is really lovely. I have nothing negative to say about them. The 2 kids clearly love their dad, and they look close to one another, like the kids, and that's a good sign that the kids are close. This is a big family turnout. Now, a lot of people were talking about how weird this is, like she's going to a funeral. I didn't see it that way. I saw it as a celebration of life. Maybe they chose this ranch because there's just more land and they were planting the tree. Maybe he's not embarrassed of his home. And let's face it, if Joan's not going to be moving anywhere, does it really matter where he lives anyway? But the family and the friends are clearly invested. Now, I felt like it was a little bit showy. Show everyone what a great guy I am. Show everyone, how much I love you. But I'm going to strip that away and say it also felt very authentic and very real. And Joan's response was very positive, that she felt honored, that she felt touched to be at this ceremony, this celebration of life for his mother. And here's what we know. These types of events, a death, it really does bond you. So Joan could be there for Chalk when he found out that his mother passed. He feels like this is something special and very intimate, even though Joan didn't get to meet his mother, but he is at a very vulnerable time. And I have to say, I put in context, maybe that's why he's just so intense. When you've had loss, everything else feels very kind of heightened, right? The show itself makes you feel really heightened and all the sensations are right at the surface. But Chalk is really doing a hard press. I don't know how odd it is. Maybe the family was getting together anyway. It's not like they gathered for that reason. I think it was kind of like, this is the perfect time. I'm sure they had a funeral otherwise. I can't believe that this is just it. But she does get to be with him at this very important time. And something that Chalk said, which I thought was really quite precious, was that Joan is my rock, right? He came to her in his grief. She said, what can I do? How can I help? Please do anything. And so there is no doubt that these two people really care for each other. Is it the big romance? I think we're getting there. But what she also said to Kathy's father, so that's really important. I'm close to my husband's late wife's mother, and we have a relationship. And when it's not like blood, but you have to choose it, that meant something. And so we meet Tom, Kathy's dad, and that he is speaking so highly about Chalk really does say something. And I don't think Chalk would have invited him if it wasn't a big deal. So we already know that Chalk's all in. Some may say he's too intense. Is it love bombing? You can't really love bomb on the show. It is intense. He doesn't like the competition. He's got a big personality. And I do think he just wants to seal the deal. He's saying all the right things. He's calling Joan the fairy princess. That was the one part about the date I didn't quite get. What are these Glinda red? Oh, well, you're not in Kansas anymore, right? The red shoes. But I don't know. It just felt a little bit, that reference just felt a little bit weird to me. Let me know what you think. Chalk's kids, Taylor and Tyler, were so thrilled to also hear how much Joan really liked their dad, right? This is a positive thing. And if the kids are already launched, right, they want their dad to be happy. He's been through loss, a divorce, loss of a partner, and they sense that dad is ready. So I thought this was one of the best. Next to Pascal was fun, but this one felt more romantic. I just feel that that connection is on a whole different level. And maybe back to why Joan is feeling so guilty, it's like it's hard for older people who aren't used to it to just spread themselves thin. Maybe that's another reason why she's feeling guilty. But I do see the connection, and I see that building over time. And Chalk even said to his dad, I'm getting there, and I think he's going to be there really soon. Okay, now Joan is back in LA, but the men are coming like out of the limo. And I liked this editing. I liked the editing where Joan is doing like a voice note over talking about the men, but she's saying to Jesse that she's more confused now than she was before, which is usually kind of strange. And I thought, if you're really into Chalk, why are you confused? But is she confused that the other two men, Pascal and Jordan, aren't as into her as she thought? I'm like, what is the confusion? So that, and I think, remember, this is very truncated. This is very fast. But she's unsure, and I think maybe a little bit that she was hoping that Pascal would come forward even more, and she didn't quite get that, and Jordan's date was a little flat. So we go into the rose ceremony, and I always pay attention to order. Chalk first, Guy second, and Pascal third. And I think that's really how they line up, quite honestly. So Jordan went home. There was barely a sneeze about it. Not a lot of, there wasn't really an ITM or him talking about it. I don't think he was that choked up. I think Jordan was surprised that he even got this far. Many of you, as well as I, was surprised that he made it to the final four. So he had a good time. He got to show, Joan around Chicago. And I think that's where we leave it. I'm not sure if we will see more of Jordan or not. So here's my thoughts. Now they show us that the next step is Fiji, right? They're getting on a plane the next day. But if what's going to happen, that Joan's family is all going to be in Fiji and they get to meet the final two guys, is usually what we see. We usually see fantasy suites, then narrowed it down to the final two. I feel like a stop that we need to make is in Rockville, Maryland. Let me know what you think. If Joan is not going to be moving, then those men need to see where she lives and how she lives, and can they envision themselves and her life there. Now, I have been hopeful, and I said this on The Golden Bachelor, that it's more likely that the man would move to a woman, and therefore that's why even more so, I think it would be important for the men to see where Joan lives. And that to me would make it feel more real. Now, Pascal would have to say, there's no way I'm moving to Maryland. But depending on where Guy is in his life, even though he's close to his family, could you do a bi-coastal thing? Could you do half and half? Could there be some mix? I don't know about Chalk. Somebody said he might work remote. Could he do that? The men are still working, or are they going to be retiring soon? Or if this is like a long-term relationship, might they have more time to figure the rest of that out? But I still think we just have to get away from this whole idea of a proposal. Even if they do, that's great. But the living situation is really with older people. Ideally, they would have found somebody who lived closer to Joan, but this is what we have, and this is where we are now. I just would have loved for them to make a stop in Maryland because that would make it more real. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought of the hometowns. I think that Joan is lovely as a guest. She was great with the grandchildren. She was great with the families. I can't wait to see Fiji. Let's see what kind of romance is sparked, because it looks like there's going to be a little bit of drama with her and Pascal, at least from the previews. And for now, that is a wrap.